All right, all right. Good evening, everybody. Man, I gotta tell you, this is Martin Ruof, and I hope I am going live on Instagram. That is all I've got to say. Because if I'm not, um, uh, somebody's going to be very upset with me. So I hope I'm live on Instagram. That's all I got to say. Looks like I am. Okay. So I see some people jumping on. Dylan Delgado, welcome. Nice to see you, my friend. And yeah, so that's awesome. So it looks like I'm live. All right, cool, great. So my name is Martin Ruoff, and this is the Martin Ruoff podcast. And I say a lot. I've been doing this podcast now. This is just my third episode for the podcast, and I'm really excited about this. The purpose for the podcast is really to it's to help people. Look, everybody's a lot of people going through a hard time right now, and it's just as a way to help people find freedom, find liberty in their life, freedom in virtually every aspect, whether it's financial freedom or whether it's emotional or mental or spiritual freedom, physical freedom, helping people overcome the obstacles and the hurdles and the things that are weighing them down. And there is the freedom from all of that, which ultimately creates liberty. And liberty is a little bit different than freedom, but one could be considered a byproduct of the other. But the main thing is this: is that for people to feel free. And just for my background, I've been in the personal development space actively for well over 20 years. I got introduced into personal development by being an entrepreneur, and I got involved in a business that was very much about it was very much about making money. It was very much about freedom, but at the core of it, it was all about developing oneself to be their personal best. And then, of course, helping other people do the same thing. And so I read a lot of books. I read a lot of things with Jim Rohn, John C. Maxwell. Just all the kings and the queens of the personal development space. But ultimately, what personal development really comes down to is it's a personal practice, and that is what being an entrepreneur also helped me understand. Is the disciplines of being an entrepreneur are very much in alignment with the disciplines of developing oneself personally. And when you look at the core or the six basic human needs, and if you don't know the six basic human needs, there's certainty, there's uncertainty, there's significance, love or connection, there's growth, and contribution. So growth is very much personal development is a basic human need. There's people that will say if they don't feel like they're growing, then they're dying. And of course, when you are working on yourself and you are growing and you're developing, you're able to contribute more to the world, more, things that are more positive and at a higher spiritual level, a higher emotional level, a higher mental level, higher mental level. But then also, you're also able to, connect better as well. So growth is a very important thing. So, as I worked in the personal development space, as I said, for really about 20 years, I've literally flown all around the world, working on stages, working with people one-on-one, working with smaller groups, and literally all the way up to audiences of 25,000 people at a time in stadiums and arenas, and working on really being the best version of yourself. That is the goal, is to be the highest, best, most contributory version of yourself. And I'm going to say, like, that's not an easy task. It's not an easy task for me. It's not an easy task for most people. It requires discipline. It requires consideration. It requires focus. And The flip side of that is, however, is being the lowest version of yourself. And to a degree, that can be pretty easy to do. There's people that I think thrive in that. And it's sort of addicting being the lowest version of yourself because, honest to God, at the end of the day, it isn't very difficult because it doesn't require taking responsibility for oneself. It doesn't require introspection. It doesn't require consideration of others. It doesn't require much thought at all. And so if you look in the world and the duality that's happening in the world today and has happened forever since the beginning of time, it is that yin and yang. It is the struggle between the light and the darkness. It's the struggle between good and evil, right? It's always that sort of that juxtaposition. And I think that to work on oneself is really one of the highest forms of contribution that we can offer to the world. Certainly that we can offer to our relationships, to our family, to our friends, to our community, and then ultimately to the world. And so I take personal development seriously, and I've taken it more seriously at other times in my life. I mean, I've ebbed and flowed with personal development, but I'm sharing all of this as to say why I'm doing this podcast is because it is a form of contribution. It's also a form for me of staying accountable to my own personal growth. And I just know that there's a lot of pain in the world right now. And I know that there's a lot of people that are thirsting for something much greater than what they're currently experiencing. And so if you are watching this and you have that aching, that burning feeling, maybe it's a burning desire, maybe it's almost a nauseating feeling inside you where you just kind of feel sick to your stomach because you're just like, you're not living the life you believe you could be destined to be living, or the life you could live. If you're feeling that way, or you're feeling like, and I don't just mean on the outside, but on the inside as well. If we want a better outside world, if you want to make more money, you want to be able to keep more money, if you want to have better relationships, if you want to have the nice things in life, I'm just going to tell you, you're going to have to sit down and deal with yourself at some point. And so, if you want those things and you're sitting here and you're frustrated because you're not living the lifestyle or the inner life that you truly want, then that's what this podcast is about. It's a home, it's a tribe, it's a community of people that are striving, moving forward. Sometimes, of course, not sometimes, but failing forward to in search of that freedom, the liberty. Okay. So that's the core of what this is about. All right. And eventually I'll find a way to say that in 30 seconds instead of, 8 minutes. But what I really want to talk about today or tonight is it's two sides of the same coin. It's resentment and forgiveness. And these are two themes that have been very present in my life as of late. And for those of you that know me and you're watching this, you might be like, dude, I know you've been going through it. Yeah, I have, just like a lot of people. And I've recently had an experience and a story that I can share of being tremendously resentful and what that has done to my body, to my mind, to my relationships, I believe even to my family, to my business, to my community. And the flip side of that, what forgiveness has done for me, just that breath right there, that is the result of forgiveness. That is that exhalation was the literal physical act and result of recognizing and remembering and practicing forgiveness. So Let's talk about resentment first, because that's so much fun to talk about. It's like, oh, I want to talk about resentment. See, resentment is one of those low level emotions, okay, it's not difficult to, how do I say this? It's a low level emotion that consumes a high level of energy. I'm gonna say it again. It's a low level emotion that consumes a high level, a high degree of energy in yourself. And also, it sucks energy from other people too. And resentment is like, as the saying goes, and I want to be clear. There's a distinction between anger and resentment. I actually think that sometimes anger can be um, uh, helpful. Sometimes anger can move you forward. Sometimes anger can propel you into action. Many times anger can be extremely destructive, though. So consciously, we have to be conscious about anger. But I don't really want to talk about anger tonight because it's different than resentment. Resentment ain't nothing but debilitating, folks. Resentment is debilitating to oneself. It is destructive to oneself. As the saying goes, resentment is when you drink poison, but wait for the other person to die. Okay. So I want you to think about your own life. Think about yourself right now. Are you angry at anything? Are you angry at anyone, at any sort of construct? And then think about that, and it shouldn't take long to think about it at all. And then start thinking about, well, wait a minute, am I actually resentful? Because resentment is a very deep seated, gut wrenching, mind bending level of emotion, where you want the absolute worst for someone else or something else. I mean, you can hear it in my voice, you can see it on my face, you can probably feel the energy of what I'm saying. It's like, it's soul sucking. And resentment is the energy of resentment is closed, it's shut. The energy of resentment, I would say, it's like prison. Okay. It is the jailer of self. Conversely, I will say forgiveness is the open door. Forgiveness is light. Forgiveness is freedom, and very different energy. Okay. But resentment, here's what I would say. If you need help in discerning or figuring out if you're in resentment, start with anger. Who are you angry at? Okay. And by the way, I would highly encourage you get out a journal, or at the very minimum, a piece of paper and a pen, and start writing. You don't have to do it right now, but do it. Do it in the morning. Do it before you go to bed. Do it in the middle of the day. Do it. Writing is one of the antidotes to freedom. By the way, it's the antidote to resentment that leads to freedom. And so write out, what are you angry about? Who are you angry at? And then this is the key. Instead of just, I mean, you can spend some time writing about what you're angry about. You can absolutely do that. I'm angry at Philip because he did this, and the son of a bitch did this, and Rankin did that. That's cool. I actually encourage you to write it out. However, you also have to write this out. Ask yourself this question. What does this, because ultimately it's a resentment. Okay. What does this anger trigger? And what it probably triggers, and I'm going to shift to the word resentment. Okay. What does this resentment actually trigger? Does it trigger, obviously it triggers all kinds of emotions, and obviously it triggers all kinds of thoughts, but ultimately, what does it really trigger? And I'm going to cut to the quick. More often than not, what it triggers is a belief about yourself. It triggers a belief about the world, which, drill down, is actually a belief you have that you are responsible for, that ultimately leads to a belief about yourself. There's a great saying, and it's not complex at all, but I'll paraphrase it this way. What I am responsible for is taking care of my side of the street. That's what I'm responsible for. I honest to God, I really don't. I really, well, that was weird. I just moved the whole camera. I don't really have the ability to, I'm not responsible for you. I'm not responsible for your emotions. I'm not responsible for the way you react to things. I'm not responsible for that. But I am responsible for myself. So I'm not here to take care of your side of the street. I'm here to take care of my side of the street. And in taking care of my side of the street, as I beautify my side of the street, as I beautify my world, what that is going to do, it is going to impact, it is going to trigger you to respond. And it's very likely that it will trigger you to respond in kind. Okay. Like attracts like. So, as the saying goes, all right, I'm going to kind of twist something here. Okay. Now I can see better. As the saying goes, and this is like the Stoics, Marcus Aurelius. Okay. If you've never read anything about Stoicism, I highly recommend you do. Certainly Marcus Aurelius is incredible to read anything. But he says that, we don't feel anger and resentment on account of what other people do. Okay. We don't feel anger, resentment on account of what other people do, but rather as a result of how we interpret those actions of other people, right? It's our interpretation of it. That's what's triggering our resentment. And resentment is like, it's just voluntary judgments about what has happened. And so that's why I suggest you write, because in writing it down, you get clear about what it is. And once you're clear on about who you're actually resentful towards and what you're resentful about, then it uncovers the belief that's causing havoc and wreaking havoc in your life. Because if you're resentful about something, my guess is it's something that comes up again and again and again. And if it's a recurring theme in your life, if it's a recurring resentment in your life, it means you have an underlying belief that is ruling, dominating, running your life. And my God, you've got to get rid of it, because it means you're not in charge of your life. It means you are a puppet to your own emotion. I have a mentor, there's been I've had three tremendous mentors in my life. First one her name was Joan, and Joan Thornton, and she taught me how to meditate, and she taught me about really looking inward. And then I had a mentor, my friend Jimmy in Los Angeles, and he just taught me about writing and really doing hardcore personal development. And the third mentor is a guy by the name of Mark Aceta. And I just blanked on what I was going to say about Mark Aceta because I started thinking about these three. But daggone it. Anyway, he was a great mentor, and he made me forget what I was gonna say about him. Oh no, shoot, I literally just forgot it. Anyway, it'll come back to me. It's the hazards of living in the moment. So shoot. In any event, you know, oh, this is what he would say. He would say, it's never about what it's about, right? It's always about what it's not about what's on the surface. It's about what's underneath. Okay. So here's the deal. When you've got that resentment and you understand it, and then it exposes a belief, our job is to eliminate the belief. Okay. When you eliminate that belief, your whole entire world will change. But here's also what you've got to do. You've got to switch over into forgiveness. And forgiveness, I've already mentioned, it's sort of it's like the opposite of resentment. And forgiveness, as I've already said, is freedom. And this is the deal with forgiveness, okay? I'm going to say this, and I'll repeat myself. Um, Resentment is low level energy. I'm sorry, a low level emotion that consumes a high level of energy. Okay. Forgiveness is a high level emotion. And for those of you that are like, well, forgiveness is an emotion, it's kind of actually, it's sort of a byproduct. But it really is actually, it really is an emotion in the sense that empathy is involved. Okay. Um, so high level emotion that consumes a low level of energy. So it juxtaposes itself from resentment. So forgiveness is a high level emotion that consumes a low level of energy and actually produces a high level of energy. It's pretty amazing. And the cool thing about resentment, and I actually wrote this down, and I'm just going to read it, but I wrote this down about 15, maybe, I don't know, 15 minutes before I was going to do this. And resentment is easy to summon. It's easy to summon resentment, but it's difficult to live with. Think about that. Resentment is easy to summon, but difficult to endure, difficult to live with. Resentment will ruin your life. I'm telling you, it will. Forgiveness is difficult to summon. Think about this. Someone really does you wrong. How easy is it to forgive them? My wife was carjacked long time, well, many years ago. Do you think I want to forgive the people that did that? But if I hold on to that energy, what is that doing to me? They don't even know I exist. They don't even care. I'm the one who's drinking the poison, waiting for them to die. Now, that's a pretty, for me, that's a pretty damn extreme example, okay, that requires work, sometimes daily. All right. But think about this. Forgiveness can be difficult to summon, but it's easy to live with. It makes your life easier. Again, I go back to resentment is prison, forgiveness is freedom. So let me give you an example of something that recently has happened to me, happened for me. It's an opportunity. Um, I'm currently owed a lot of money by someone. And I have been, I was expecting to, I was expecting to be given this money, repaid this money recently, a couple of months ago. And it didn't occur, didn't happen. And I started getting, when I addressed it with the individual, I started getting a bunch of how I interpreted them to be excuses as to why it couldn't happen. And in my mind, I had, not even in my mind, I had been thinking about, well, this is a large sum of money. I mean, it's a significant six figures, a very high six figures. And I was expecting it. And so I had plans for it, and I was like, oh, cool, I'll do this and I'm going to do that and blah, 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 blah. And when it didn't occur, I was let down. And at first it triggered a bunch of emotions. There was some fear, there was some anxiety, there was definitely anger about it. And then as it continued to go on, and I felt like I was continually getting blown off in my pursuit of this, which was money that is rightfully owed to me. It turned into full-fledged resentment, and I started walking around, not a joke, like every day, waking up thinking about this, like this. This is in my mind. I'm like, son of a bitch, like I'm owed this freaking money. Like, what the hell? This is wrong. I was justified in my resentment. This is the catch, everybody, right here. Some of your resentments are justified. You're justified. I'm like legally owed this money. I deserve it. I've worked for this. I'm owed this. I should be paid this. Damn it. Why am I not getting this? How could they do that? Don't they know what this means? Do you hear do you hear the shift that just went on in the story? The shift went away from them and it went on to me. That is the key. If you just turn that key right there, and it requires consciousness, you have to be willing to see it. If you just turn that key, that's where the freedom begins to, that's where the freedom can enter. Okay. The door opens at that. The door is unlocked at that point. Now you have to do the work to push that door open. Okay. And I'll explain what I mean by this. Once you start going into the resentment and the story of, don't they know? Doesn't that person know what this means to me? Don't they know what me. Now your justifiable resentment has turned into super toxic, a super toxic revelation of a belief about yourself that you're not acknowledging. And when you walk around like that, you start walking around as a lower level version of yourself. So for me, it impacted my relationship with my family. I found myself getting more triggered by things that our 4-year-old was doing, which breaks my heart. I'm being triggered by things my wife would say or do, which also breaks my heart. It also caused me to lose sleep. I mean, literally, I would wake up, not a joke, 2 a.m., and I'd be awake until 5 a.m., 6 a.m., just seething. And sometimes I wasn't even really conscious of what I was seething about. Then I was walking around, then I was enrolling other people in my story. Business associates, enrolling other people in my story. Did you hear what happened? That's debilitating. That's not lifting up other people. Again, resentment is a low level emotion that consumes a high degree of energy. And here's the kicker. It doesn't just consume it from you. It consumes it from the people you draw into your story. So if anybody's on here, if any of my business associates are on here and I enrolled you in my story, I apologize. I owe you an amends. And whoops. And, I would just say this, jumping to forgiveness. It took me months, straight up 2.5 months almost, to really deal with this resentment, to really deal with it. And the way I dealt with it was I wrote and I took long walks and I wrote and I wrote and I wrote. And I finally got clear about what I was resentful about. And for me, what the resentment exposed was a belief I have about myself that dealt with unworthiness. Because ultimately I became angry at myself. How could I let this happen? How could I let them treat me that way? I created this. So that's the other piece with resentment. If you want to move into forgiveness, you have to own your resentment. If you want to move into forgiveness, you have to take ownership of your belief, because we teach people how to treat us. You teach people every day, every moment, how to treat you. Don't be mad at them when they treat you poorly if you're the one that allowed it to occur in the first place. Because you certainly have the power to say, you know what, that's not cool. That's unacceptable. Don't treat me that way. You don't have the right to speak to me that way. You can speak to me that way, but deuces, I'm out. That's how you teach people to treat you. That's called integrity of self. That's honoring yourself. That's self esteem. That's high self worth. So, what this triggered for me is low self worth. I allowed them to do this. I allowed this. And on some level, I created it. Shit. I created it. That's a bitter, large, bitter pill to swallow. But I swallow it because it's also the pill that creates the freedom for me. It's the pill that creates the freedom for you. Because now I no longer have to be resentful at them because the resentment isn't about them. And by the way, resentment doesn't mean, or I'm sorry, forgiveness doesn't mean excusing one's behavior. It doesn't mean that what the other person is doing is right. It doesn't mean that not paying me the money that I'm owed is right. It doesn't mean that. It doesn't mean, hey, it's okay, don't pay. No, pay me. But I don't have to be resentful about it because it's an opportunity for me to learn and to grow and develop myself, just like it's an opportunity for you to learn and grow and develop yourself. And so forgiveness looks also like an action. My wife would tell you, I wake up every day and I literally read it's a forgiveness prayer. I literally read it out loud. I literally read it at night before I go to bed. It is the last thing I read, literally. And I'll read it with my son, in the room, whatever. It doesn't matter. My wife's in the room. I read it. I can read it out loud. I can read it to myself. But that's not just it. It's not just that action. It's not just the action of writing, and it's not just the action of reading. It's not just the action of prayer or meditation, but it's the actual action of communication with another person. So recently I sat down with the party that I was resentful towards, the party that owes me the money. And I sat down and I promise you, I was hella pissed off on one level, but on another level, I just said, you know what? This is unhealthy. This is toxic. I'm hurting myself more than I'm hurting them. And I'm hurting the people around me more than I'm hurting myself. And I'm hurting opportunity more than I'm hurting them. And so I just sat down and I just took responsibility for my feelings, from my side of the street. And this is exactly what I said. And I share this with you in no way, shape, or form, not like, oh, look what I did. I share this with you so you can see what the power of forgiveness can actually do. And I sat down and I said, hey, listen, I want you to know that there's something between us and I don't like it. It's not productive for me. It's not productive in any way, shape, or form. And I'm I've been resentful about it. And I literally said, I've been like resenting you. And that's just not how I want to live my life. And by the way, I didn't come at this, this person with any anger. I wasn't yelling. I didn't even raise my voice. I literally sat down on the floor on my knees and just spoke. And I took responsibility for my part. And what's interesting is that something similar happened in kind. And what resulted of that was clarity and freedom and communication. What resulted was freedom. What did I say the purpose of this podcast is? Freedom and liberty. I was liberated from my own resentment. And that instantly, instantly made me feel lighter, made me feel better about myself because I was operating from a place of high self esteem, high self worth. Was it scary on one level to have this conversation? Kind of scary, kind of. I was nervous about it. It was certainly uncomfortable. But as the saying goes, it was a crucial conversation. There's a great book I highly encourage you to read it, Crucial Conversations. And that crucial conversation that was uncomfortable at first became simple to have. And then ultimately, I walked out of that meeting, that encounter, where both parties, all the parties involved, felt great. Would I had to be the one to initiate it though. That other party would not initiate that conversation. I know they wouldn't have. And that's okay. That's okay. I did it. Take ownership of your resentments, take ownership of your negative belief, and take ownership of your actions of forgiveness. And I'll wrap up with this. Forgiveness is also about not just forgiving another person. Forgiveness is about forgiving yourself. So I had to forgive myself. Forgiveness, Marcus Aurelius says, forgiveness is a gift. Is a gift to yourself, and it is a gift to others. I have felt lighter. I have felt freer. I have slept well. I've not walked around feeling angry. I've not walked around feeling triggered. Forgiveness. So I share this with you, resentment, forgiveness, two sides of the same coin. If you are lacking freedom in your life and you are resentful about things, I implore you, I encourage you to do the work, do the writing. Ask yourself, what am I angry about? What is this resentment really about? And if you need to unload with paper and pen about that other person, and you want to just eviscerate that other entity or that other person with your pen, do so. But don't you dare send that letter to anyone, because that letter, that journal entry, what it really needs to be is, what is this resentment really reminding me of? What is this resentment really about? And if you want a clue, here is a brilliant clue. What responsibility? No. What part do I play in this resentment? If you're writing anything down, write this. What part do I play in this resentment? I'm telling you, folks, that's the key. That's it. You answer that question and you are on your way to uncovering a truth, a belief that you have that is holding you back, and that if it's recurring, it is significantly limiting the full expression of who you really are. And chances are it's sabotaging your life. Okay. So I could spend a lot more time talking about this, but as normal, I've gone over. I keep wanting to end in 30 minutes, and now it's 7:40. So I'm gonna wrap up with this: is that I just encourage you to really do this work, this inner work. It's worth it. If you want your life to change, you have to be willing to deal with yourself. As the saying goes, deal with your demons before they deal with you. Deal with your demons before they deal with you. because you don't want what they have to offer. If you want the life of freedom, if you want liberty, you've got to be free of your resentments. And to be free of your resentments, you've got to be free of your limiting beliefs of yourself. Because all that will do is lead you to a life of forgiveness, a life of joy, a life of freedom, a life of laughter, a life of abundant prosperity, a life of contribution, and a life of continual growth. And ain't that what it's really all about? So I hope you got value out of this. Thank you for watching this. I'm here every Tuesday. I'm going to be recording more of these. This is not recorded. I mean, I'm recording it, but this is live. I will be recording more podcasts and I'll post them on the YouTube channel. The YouTube channel is just the Martin Ruof podcast. Please, if you feel so inclined, go to it, subscribe, and like this and share this with other people. If you think someone would get value from what you've heard tonight, please feel free to share it with someone. Okay. Because ultimately, again, one of the 6 basic human needs is contribution. Contribute. It's also love. Contribute and share this with someone that may be in need. All right. So with that said, thank you again. Episode 3, we're done. All right. I appreciate you taking the time to be on here. It means a lot to me and I'm grateful. And I'll be back here next Tuesday, 7 p.m. Central Time with another episode of the Martin Ruof podcast and another, hopefully, another episode that offers value for you. All right. God bless. Have a great night. Take care. Hey, get out of here.